speaker. His name is Mr. Jim Press. Jim is a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel who served 21 years on active and reserve duty. He taught history at Northwestern Michigan College in Traverse City, specializing in military history with courses on the American Civil War, the First and Second World Wars, and the Vietnam War. After teaching college for 27 years, he retired and moved with his wife, Christine, to the Villages in 2016. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be back here, and I'm one of 5 generations who have served in the United States Army, the Marine Corps, and the Navy. My daughter-in-law is retired, my brother's retired, my son is about to become a sergeant major in the Army. I'm retired. My grandfather was in the First World War and then joined the Navy. He was in the Army in the First World War and joined the Navy in the Second World War. So I think we've got it all covered. Thank you very much. We're going to talk about the Declaration of Independence. My first question to you is, have you ever read it?
Yes.
Think about that. Have you ever read the Declaration of Independence? The surveys tell us about 42% of Americans have. It takes about 10 minutes. So if you haven't, maybe over the course of the next few days, you might take a copy and read the Declaration of Independence. It's an amazing document. If you have read it, think about what is your favorite part, word, or phrase. A lot of people pick this one. Self-evident that all men are created equal. Maybe this one. Endowed by their creator, unalienable rights. And then we all like this one. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Tell me what the pursuit of happiness means. What did he mean when he wrote that, he being Thomas Jefferson? Some people like this one. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And so those are generally some of the leading ideas that come to mind when you talk to people about the Declaration of Independence. Now, on the road to the Declaration of Independence, it was a long struggle. It took things like the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, and years of trying to work out our differences with the mother country back in Britain. And then this man came along and he wrote a pamphlet entitled Common Sense, and his name is Thomas Paine, and he laid out an argument, well, let's stop trying to negotiate with the king, let's stop trying to send olive branch petitions, let's leave the monarchy, leave Great Britain, and become free and independent. And as he said, I offer simple facts, plain arguments, and common sense. And that's exactly what Thomas Jefferson thought he was doing when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Now the process picks up speed on June 7th when Richard Henry Lee from Virginia says that we, the Virginia delegation, resolve that we should be independent. And that starts the process. Then the rest of the members of Congress are supposed to then figure out, well, are we going to vote for independence? Some of them want to keep trying olive branch petitions. And so we're not a united Congress at that period of time. They did form a committee to write up the reasons why and how we were going to do this. And they picked out 5 men, Adams, Franklin, Sherman, and Livingston. But the most important one was one of the youngest men there, and they picked out Thomas Jefferson. And Jefferson looked like he'd write the Declaration of Independence. He was only 33, and this photo is based on a life mask that he made at age 82, and this is what AI can do for you. You can take that 82-year-old face mask and tell us that this is probably what Thomas Jefferson looked like when he was around 33 years old and he started drafting the Declaration of Independence. Now, John Adams said, well, why, of the 5 of us, why Jefferson? It's like group work in college. Maybe 1 or 2 of us are going to do most of the work. Jefferson had the fewest enemies in Congress and was the best writer. John Adams probably had the most enemies in Congress, so it's not going to be me. So let's, Tom, you do it, you draft it up, and then we'll come in and check your work. Now, who was Thomas Jefferson? Lawyer, father, scientist, governor, diplomat, revolutionary, obviously president, vice president, architect. He did own slaves. He had 6 children, only 2 of them survived. 2 of them were daughters. Here's a picture of one of his daughters out of that period of time. His wife would also pass away after the Revolutionary War. Promoted religious freedom, was part of the first opposition party ever formed, participated in the first peaceful transfer of a contested election. And as someone said, Jefferson's capacity to live with contradictions was nothing less than epic. So the man that said all men are created equal owned slaves. Now Jefferson was one of the most prolific writers we've ever had. It's estimated 2,700 documents. He wrote 27,000 documents. Generally received about 1,200 a year, and he liked to answer everyone back, and he liked to keep a copy of his answer. So do you see the machine? Right on one side, and it copies it on the other. He didn't invent that, he improved it. I really like this invention. That's his bed, and depending on what mood, you can get out on different sides and go straight into different rooms. All right, that could be handy, I guess. He loved wine. In fact, some historians said he was a wine snob. Now, he served as an American minister in France, fell in love with everything France, fell in love with their wine and their cuisine. He even had his chef there with him, and he said, you are going to learn French cuisine, and you're going to bring it back to Virginia and America. So he sent him to the greatest culinary institutes in Paris and France, and he became an expert in French cuisine, and then brought those ideas back here with him. It says here he imported 600 or so bottles every year from Europe, spent about $10,000 on his wine his first presidential term, which is nearly $200,000 today. And he doesn't have that kind of money. Okay, he doesn't have that kind of money. This is a photo of his wine cellar, and there's the dumbwaiter he built to have the bottles brought up whenever he wanted. And when he died on July 4th, he was probably in debt for at least $1 million in today's money. And a lot of that has to do with his wine. Now, his family had to sell off all of his personal property, his estates, his furniture, his enslaved individuals, and it took 2 generations and 50 years to pay off the debt. But they eventually did. So he was a big spender. He was a shopaholic. Now, he served as the nation's first Secretary of State, second Vice President, third American President, so he's very important and significant throughout this process. And him and John Adams died on the same day, on the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. John died first, he was 90, and a few hours later, Thomas died at 83. That's amazing. That's twice as long as the average American. So back to writing the Declaration of Independence. He did it in his rented room in Philadelphia, roughly between the 11th and the 28th, drawing up that declaration. They desired me to do it. I said, okay, I'll try it out, And he sat there pretty much alone. And then when he had it done, he brought in Franklin and Adams, and he said, would you look at it? Now, when John says, will you look at it, all he wants from you is, this is great. He doesn't really want you to seriously edit it. Well, unfortunately for him, Franklin and Adams are going to really edit that document. That's what they do. They start crossing out this and crossing out that, and then writing in this and writing it, and the more they do it, the more upset Tom gets. And then they produce a rough draft, which they turn into Congress. This is what it would look like if we did it up like that. I mean, they were making significant changes to his rough draft. They'll then submit that draft to Congress, and then to his horror, they want to edit it. So that really upset him, and he never got over that. He talked about that all of his life, and he noted 86 times they changed a perfect document. And he'd tell you that at every party he was at. There was no need for that. He was extremely, for every deletion, alteration, and addition. So what we end up with is roughly a 3-part with a preamble, the grievances, and the resolution. The preamble is probably the most famous, the grievances not so much, but in Thomas's mind that's the most important part of the Declaration of Independence. Like a lawyer, he's laying out his evidence for what we're about to do. So the first part, the preamble, is why the colonies are severing their connection with Britain. I want to explain it in common sense terms for my fellow Americans, and more importantly, for Europe. So he's going back and he's harking back to as far as 1215 in English history, 1689 in English history, when the English themselves were putting limits on their king. And so this is nothing new for Englishmen to begin to try to put limits on their monarchy. And Thomas is well educated, as is Benjamin Franklin, that most of the delegates to the Continental Congress. And so they would be, yes, yep, I understand the Magna Carta limits the kings, the 1689. And if he talked about John Locke, he would talk about, yes, John Locke wrote up in 1689, the laws of nature and nature's God give us rights of life, liberty, and property. See, that's not original to Thomas Jefferson. In fact, he'll tell you, there's nothing original in the Declaration of Independence. I'm just bringing back what I've learned, what we've all learned, what we all know, and I'm laying it out for us. So you can see life, liberty, and then he decided, well, let's change property. And let's change it into that pursuit of happiness. Now, the most important part of that part was the forward-looking, that we are going to be one people, and we're going to separate into a new nation, and we want to assume a separate and equal station with the world. That's what we're telling. We don't want to just break away from Britain. We want to be separate from Britain, but we also want to be of equal status. And this is roughly the way the world looked at that period of time. When he says the world, he obviously means Europe, the great kingdoms and monarchies of Europe, like France and some of the others. Now, the Declaration lists life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the right to life, fundamental to all of us, defend ourselves against aggression, and provide for our own basic needs. So we're laying that out, and that's in fact what we're doing as we wrote that document. Liberty, what does liberty mean? The absence of restraint, as long as those choices do not endanger the lives or compromise the rights of others. So that's what liberty roughly defined, and everyone should be familiar with that. This is common sense, Thomas is trying to tell us. And the third, that pursuit of happiness. Now, unfortunately for us and the generations that will precede us, he never explained what he meant when he wrote that. So there's been a lot of disagreement about, well, what is that exactly? Now, is it I'm happy today? No, it's not that level of immediate happiness. What we believe he was after was the personal fulfillment achieved by virtuous deeds. Put aside your selfish motives for the good of others. That's what we're doing this. This is what the pursuit of happiness. We want you to have the ability to work with others like you do here at Honor Flight. You're helping other individuals, and that is the pursuit of happiness, a much larger goal than you simply being happy. Another view of the pursuit of happiness regards freedom not as boundless, not for feel-good moments, but to make wise choices over the course of our lives. And you can see we're producing a better society and thus a better nation. Now, what did he mean by all men are created equal? He was not talking about individual equality. He's not. What he's talking about is Americans as a people have the same self-government rights as other peoples. And we want to be separate, and we want to be equal, though, among the other nations. So he's thinking of it in much broader terms. Now, the document is a living document that is going to affect the lives of generation after generation. And Franklin knew that. He said that many times. We're not just writing this for us today. This is going to your grandparent, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. And he said, we've got problems with it now, but I believe as we move forward, things will change for the better. So the meaning of it will change. Now, the grievances are injuries and usurpations against King George III. As I said, Tom believed this was the most important part. He wrote out dozens of these. And one of the biggest things the Continental Congress did is said, no, Tom, that's out. No, that's out. No, you can't say that. No, Tom. No, you can't take that. And so they cut his grievances, at one point, 80 of them, down to 27. And that really angered him. In fact, they took out his favorite grievance. What? That one? So, here are some they left in. He erected a multitude of officers and sent hither swarms of officers to harass you. That's the kind of language I like. Swarm of officers. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, this is the most famous. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. You're probably most familiar with that one. Excited domestic insurrections among us by the merciless Indian savages. They put that one in and took out his favorite grievance. Does anyone know what his favorite grievance was?
Something about wine?
Wine, yes. We want more wine. He blamed the King of England for slavery. And too many of the other no, we're not going down that road. So they pulled that one out. The last part is the resolution. There's no reason you have to sign it, and if you do sign it, you're a traitor. Would you sign a document that identified you as being a traitor? Knowing you're breaking free from the most powerful nation on earth? You put your John Hancock on there, as we used to say, they're going to come for you. And they're also going to come for your family. And they're going to come for your livelihood. So they said, we're going to pledge and bond our support together, our fortunes and our sacred honor. Yes, let's sign it. Let's sign it. So they decided they would sign it. 56 signed at different times. Most of them, about 51, signed on August 2nd, well after the 4th of July. And some of them that were there didn't sign it. Some of them that joined Congress afterwards did sign it. And so they were good to their word. And John Hancock's was the largest. Supposedly John signed it so large, saying you can read it without your spectacles. He never said that. He never said that. So that's a myth of history. He was the first to sign it because he's president of the Congress. And that's his normal size when he signs something. And being first, he didn't see that some others would sign very small. So it's nothing to do about trying to taunt the king or the king's ministers. And they know the penalty could be death. And in fact, the official penalty for treason in the British Empire at this period of time is to hang you and then pull you in 4 different directions and quarter you. Now they've stopped the quartering, but they will hang you. But I suppose if they wanted to, that was the official penalty for treason in the British Empire. Now, some interesting things. Trivia, the first to die was John Morton in 1777. So barely, a year? Button, he died from a duel. And Charles Carroll of Carlington, he lived to the ripe old age of 95. He was the last one. Button was the governor of Georgia, lost the election, decided he was angry about it, and ended up getting killed in the process of fighting over Georgia. 2 of the signers, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, were presidents of the United States. They had been friends. They wrote the Declaration of Independence. Then they became arch enemies when the political parties were created. And then towards both the ends of their lives, John Adams' wife said, come on now, John, come on, let's go. And so they healed that relationship and were back in correspondence, but before they both passed. Audacious first step in creating a new nation, an aspirational gift to humanity. It's hypocritical at this time, but one day we will achieve equality. So just give us time about that. Timeless document and a diplomatic appeal to the world that we're going to need your help to do this. Now, who else considered the Declaration a key document? In fact, he considered it more important than the Constitution of the United States. And this individual would help Benjamin Franklin realize his goal that generations down the road, that all men are created equal will mean exactly that. Not in the sense that Thomas thought when he wrote it. And that individual was Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was one of the greatest proponents of the Declaration of Independence. In Gettysburg in 1863, he reframed the Civil War as a struggle not only to save the Union, but a struggle for liberty and equality that reaches all the way back to 1776. So he's transforming the Civil War by using the Declaration of Independence. 7 years ago doesn't mean 1787 when the Constitution was ratified. Do your math. It meant 1776. He's bypassing the Constitution and going straight to the Declaration of Independence when he gives that famous speech at Gettysburg. The great principle or idea, the sentiment embodied, the Declaration of Independence, liberty not alone to the people of the country, but also to the world and into the future. And now it's our time at this point to expand the rights from the Declaration of Independence. A promise due in time, the weights should be lifted from the shoulders of all men, and that all of us should have an equal chance. So he's taking what Tom, and he's bringing it right around to his generation, and he's using it so effectively. Excuse me. Lincoln's leadership during the war was motivated by the belief that the Declaration of Independence applied to all colors everywhere. And now it's our chance to do something about that. When he entered Richmond in April of 1865, just a couple of days before they would assassinate him, and Richmond is the defeated Confederacy's capital, which is in flames as the Confederates retreat out of it, he decides, I'd like to go there. In fact, I'll bring my son. So the Union Navy brings him there. The Army is so surprised they don't have a bodyguard for him. So sailors from the ship have to escort him into town, and the only people left in Richmond are the recently freed slaves. And you can imagine once the word got out that Abraham Lincoln was in Richmond, they flocked to wherever he might be. And he told a group of recently freed slaves that. And there it is. Benjamin Franklin had some sense. We'll get there one day. 1 generation, 2 generations, 3 generations ahead of us. You are free. You have the same rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, back in '61, he wrote this. And within 2 days, they killed him. So that's how important it was to him, this Declaration of Independence. Excuse me. Some things you might not know, some more trivia. The news of the Declaration of Independence reached New York City. It started a riot. Now, it's a good riot, because what we did is they went out and they pulled down the statue of King George III, and then had a hell of a party. So, more of a party. One signer of the Declaration of Independence was under British captivity, and, you know, we might be able to let you go if you recant your signature on the document. All right, I recanted. All right, you can go. And, well, I didn't really do that, so we appeared that one decided he would recant. Okay. The Declaration of Independence spent World War II in Fort Knox. That's how important it was, so the original copy was sent there. There's something written on the back of the Declaration of Independence. There's a trivia question. In fact, Hollywood made a series of movies all about that. Remember those? Did you ever see those movies? So what's on the back of the Declaration of Independence? I'm not going to tell you. The original draft of the Declaration of Independence was lost. Can you imagine how much you'd make on Antiques Roadshow if you showed up? Not everyone was ready to accept the Declaration of Independence when it was first written. So it wasn't, remember, at least a third of us here wanted to remain loyal to Great Britain. Benjamin Franklin's son was the royal governor. In fact, they never spoke again. So Benjamin Franklin is part of the process, and his son is on the other side, and they never heal that family wound. Who was the oldest person to sign the Declaration? Not the oldest one that lived alone. Who was the oldest one to sign it? Oh, Benjamin Franklin. He was 70. Thomas was 33 and he was 70. Yes, it spawned a whole series of both local and world. It did have that effect on the world. And in fact, some of the states actually had their own Declaration of Independence before Halifax resolved. North Carolina was the first of any colonial government in April, so they beat it by a couple of months. Rhode Island in May, a couple of months. Congress declared itself free. Vermont did it a little later, so everybody wants to get in on the process locally here within the United States. Haiti in 1804 copied us, Venezuela in 1811, Greece, Belgium, Liberia, and Vietnam in 1945 copied your Declaration of Independence. In fact, Ho Chi Minh, with the white star above his head, had lived in the United States of America, liked the United States of America, thought you were the first one to break free of a colonial master, therefore you would help us break free of our French colonial master as World War II is ending. Sent 9 telegrams to President Harry Truman, and not one of them was ever answered. So there's a what if. A what if. That's an American OSS team that worked side by side with Ho Chi Minh and his Viet Minh guerrillas in World War II. So there's a great what if of history. In 1825, one of the other delegates wrote Tom and said, you know, Tom, why did you do it? Why did you write that declaration we were all part of? In his response, the object of the declaration was an appeal to the tribunal of the world. Okay, that's all right, I understand that. I merely placed before mankind common sense in terms so plain and firm to command their assent, ours and Europe's, and justify ourselves. And then he said this: the declaration was intended to be an expression of the American mind. Do you have the American mind? Can you tell me what the American mind is? Think about that. He knew when he wrote it. The American mind. We all have an excellent understanding of history. We know where we came from. We know what those before us did. And that's, we're taking that, not creating anything new, we're taking that and carrying it forward into the next generation. Thank you very much. You've been very kind.
Okay, any questions?
Questions, comments?
Got a question over here.
Yeah, what's written on the back of the Declaration?
I can't tell you. Oh yeah, you can easily find. It's nothing spectacular at all. It really isn't. If you roll it up, and you obviously then can't see what's on the other side, so what do you write? Declaration of Independence. So when you're looking at the roll, oh yeah, this is it. That's all that's on. That's all that's on. But it makes for good movies.
What word was misspelled on the Declaration of Independence? Right above the signatures, Pennsylvania, with one N.
William Penn. Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, was it true that they made musket balls out of the statue of King George when it was torn down?
I think that might, yes, I think, don't quote me on that, but I think you're right. Yeah, absolutely. They're going to need as much lead as they can get, as much metal as they can get. I know they went so far as to come up to your house and say, I see you have metal hangers for your shutters. We need that metal. Take your shutters down, and then you figure, well, how do I put my shutters back on? We'll use leather straps. So they went so far as to start cleaning out and finding all the metal they could. Sure, absolutely. Anyone else?
I'd like to know if this is true. I recently was told that a woman named Catherine Goddard was the only woman that also signed the Declaration of Independence.
I don't believe she signed it, but I believe she had a role in printing it. I believe she was a printer, which would be exceptional at that period of time, and I believe she had a role in printing some of the first. How many of the original printing are, I think the last number I read is there's 26 or 27 of, I believe, about 200 of the original copies still with us. And obviously, most of those are on the National Archives, wherever they might be. But if you've ever found one, you'll be rich. Anyone else?
How were the delegates chosen to sign?
Well, their colonies chose them to go, and then what they decided to do is, okay, let's start in the northeast and work our way geographically south. So the colonies up in the northeast would sign first, and the last colony to sign the document was? Georgia. And they put them in columns like that. I end up with John Hancock's in the middle because he was president of the Congress at that period of time. Anyone else? You might see some stuff online where some of them were captured, some of them might have been killed. None of them were. Some of them were financially ruined, and they did come close to capturing Thomas Jefferson once, but...
Sir, I've had many history classes, and what you just gave us was the best one I've ever had.
Oh, all right. Thank you, very kind. Thank you. Remember, this was my job, and I love doing this because I don't have to grade research papers and exams.
All right, any more questions?
Well, thank you very much. All the best.